It's Friday, July 3rd, the year of our Lord 2020, episode 263 of War Room Pandemic, broadcasting live here from Capitol Hill on America's Voice, Newsmax TV, the John Fredericks Radio Network, and blown through the CCP's firewall in China thanks to G News and GTV, subtitled in Mandarin. Lots to go through today. Stephen K. Bannon joining us down the line. Steve.
Yeah, big day today. President Trump's leaving to go out to Mount Rushmore to give a big speech and have a real celebration of America. This is the day that, because it's a federal holiday, people are taking off today to celebrate the 4th of July. Tomorrow's obviously the real 4th of July. Probably one of the more troubled 4th of Julys we've had in this country. So it's going to be a very, very interesting weekend. But I think the things at the top of the news, that's the most important thing we can get to, is we've got to talk about the pandemic. We've got to talk about what's happening in the United States, what the real action is, what's really happening. And Jack, I know we got some major breaking news. You would know this by reading the New York Times or the Washington Post or going on CNN this morning, because I don't think CNN mentioned it. I know it was missing in the Post and the New York Times. Talk to us about this new study about hydroxychloroquine, one of the things the president's been talking about for several months that was really dismissed by the media and dismissed by a lot of the medical profession that came on MSNBC and CNN. We want to start the show today with really, I think, the most important breaking news of this morning, and that's this major study coming out of Detroit.
And it's a study that really should give people a lot of heart, and to a large extent, it vindicates the people who are saying that hydroxychloroquine could be a possible benefit for this disease. This was published in the International Journal of Infectious Disease. I'll get to that in a moment. A well-regarded, peer-reviewed publication. The study was called an observational cohort study of hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin for COVID-19. And now what's very interesting, this was a study where they took the results of treatments of over 2,000 patients in a series of hospitals in the Detroit area where there were 2,541 patients. They were broken up into several groups. There were 409 people who got azithromycin only. There were 147 people who got hydroxychloroquine alone. And then there were hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin. Hydroxychloroquine was 1,202, and hydroxychloroquine plus azithromycin was 783. Now, they looked at the outcomes of all of these patients, and it really is absolutely stark when you consider it. The people who did not get hydroxychloroquine, 26.4% of them died. But those who did receive hydroxychloroquine, fewer than half that number, 13% died. This is an astounding report, and this is one that I think really is going to resound across the board. Let's not forget that this is published by the International Journal of Infectious Diseases. And if we look back on the way that this has played out, one of the people who has mostly poo-pooed this has been Dr. Fauci. Let's not forget that he is the head of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. And now the Journal of Record concerning infectious diseases has come out and published this. What is striking, Steve, that we've seen so many places is the lack of coverage. CNN did a brief spot on it, but they said, oh, well, there still needs to be more study. There does need to be more study, and one of the things that's very interesting here is the doctors involved in the study said that a big part of their problem in terms of enrolling patients were the news stories in the mainstream media declaring this drug to be very, very unsafe and to cause all sorts of heart problems. One thing that was very interesting to me in this study, because of those concerns, each of these patients was very, very clearly monitored for heart arrhythmias. And in the study, they found that they had no problems where that was concerned. In the background of this, there's another study that the Henry Ford Hospital is doing along these lines. The study was designed to be for 3,000 healthcare workers, where they were giving them hydroxychloroquine as a prophylactic. That study has not been released yet, but it is going out in the near future. Now, one of the problems is the Henry Ford Health System said that they were having a real difficulty getting healthcare workers and emergency responders to participate in the study because of what they had seen on CNN and MSNBC about how this drug could kill you and cause you to have a heart attack. So it's very interesting inside the actual study.
Wait, you got to hear us with that again. That's a buried lead.
Yeah, this is a big problem. The mainstream media scared the participants, the people that they wanted to participate in this study, so they had great difficulty getting the numbers that they wanted, that the study was designed around. Now, that study should be coming out pretty soon, we're hoping, and my understanding is that that study was so well funded that we've actually extended some of that funding to some foreign hospitals as well. And that's going to be called, a study will be titled, Will Hydroxychloroquine Impede or Prevent COVID-19? That study is not out yet, but it should be coming, I'm guessing, very soon. Now, one of the things that the authors of this study said, and it's kind of interesting, they said, it is, however, very sobering to note that the number of patients in the single observational study would have made a substantive contribution to any randomized control trial. While all healthcare providers feel a clinical imperative to offer patients treatment, there was little evidence to justify hydroxychloroquine protocol at the outset of the pandemic. It is a failing of healthcare systems and research infrastructures that the protocolization of unproven therapies is exponentially easier to execute than participation in pragmatic randomized control trials. Moving forward, we encourage academic centers to commit to participating in the necessary clinical trials that will establish high-quality evidence for safe and effective therapies in the shortest possible time. Essentially, what they are doing in the most benign and elegant way is calling out American academia and American research institutions, many of whom were reluctant because of the bullying that was occurring inside the press concerning hydroxychloroquine. I believe we all know how that started. President Trump, I believe it was on March 17th, said, hey, we're working on a lot of different things. Some of my guys tell me that I think hydroxychloroquine could really work well. And immediately, this 70-year-old drug that is given out by the handful in Africa became the most terrifying drug on planet Earth for Americans. This, to me, is a big problem, and Raheem, the politicization of it is the problem.
You talked about the lack of coverage of this right now, but the coverage that there has been also needs some scrutiny. The CNN Health article about this starts, the opening line is, a surprising new study found that the controversial anti-malarial drug hydroxychloroquine helped patients. The framing of this, they are still unwilling to give anything here.
Well, and what's quite frightening about it, when you're reading the news reports out of Detroit, the University of Michigan system followed the lead of the fearmongers and eliminated hydroxychloroquine from any of their treatment protocols, period. And they're still sticking by it. I mean, I suppose it's one of those things where you'd rather stand by your shame than admit it. But I think one of the things that is really quite frightening about this, and we've seen this throughout the pandemic, this idea that there is both a scientific aspect and a medical aspect to solving this, but there has been throughout the world a very strong political component concerning anybody who is perceived to be an enemy of the left. We've seen this in Brazil with Bolsonaro, and we've seen this with Donald Trump, and concerning the same exact medicine.
And there's about to be, I would imagine, a legal aspect to this.
Oh, without question. I think that the American people are going to have to ask the question at some point now that we have this evidence, and prayerfully feel sorry for every family that suffered a loss of a loved one. But some people are going to have to start asking why their aunt died in New Orleans and their uncle didn't die in Detroit and New York City and vice versa. Because clearly the evidence is here that there were no heart problems, number one, because that was the greatest fear. And number two, it reduced the mortalities of the people taking it by about 40%. This, and especially the study comes out and says that they started to give the drug to almost everybody within 24 hours and the rest of them within 48 hours. So this drug was given early. This follows the protocols that we've seen from Dr. Zelenko, who's been on this show. These follow the protocols from what we've heard from our Indian colleagues. These follow the protocols that we heard from France early on. All of these things were rejected by the mainstream scientists in our institutions and by our mainstream media. And I believe, Raheem, you make a very good point. I think we have to ask the question, why? Why has science now become something that is not completely objective? Because it seems to me, Raheem, that we've kind of fallen to the
Hey,
wayside.
Steve, jump in here.
Guys, hang over a second. I got a question to ask you guys. Here's what I don't understand. Isn't Dr. Fauci the head of the infectious disease part of NIH? I mean, he's not head of NIH. Dr. Collins is. A lot of people confuse that. He's the infectious disease guy.
Yes,
and
he
every
is.
time, we're lectured all day long. And I agree with MSNBC in saying, and things should be data-based, they should be science-based, they should be evidence-based. On this show, for now months, we have been highly critical of Dr. Fauci, not because of a traditional attack from the right. He knows Hillary Clinton, or he gave money to the Democratic Party, or he winked at Jonathan Karl. It's the fact that he never really puts forth evidence or data or science. We hear kind of these generalities, and he goes all over the map. One day masks are bad, the other day masks, everybody's got to wear a mask everywhere. And then he says, I was just saying the first time I was lying so that people, the doctors and nurses could get masks. Dr. Fauci changed the goalpost, but here's what I don't understand. This is a peer-reviewed journal. Besides Lancet and maybe New England Journal of Medicine and some others, this is for that specialty, the top peer-reviewed journal. So you have a peer-review article, and the numbers are not small. I mean, Jack, you're talking about 40%, increases, or 40% better, higher chance of living when it was given to you. And this is not the prophylactic test. This is actually when you had the disease and you're in a hospital. So the numbers are so blow away. Correct me if I'm wrong, and I asked Greg Mansier, has Dr. Fauci made any comments on the study? So people should know, this study just didn't appear out of nowhere. It was Dr. O'Neill, and I think the Ford Center has been doing this. My understanding, there's something out in Mount Sinai that may be coming out. We're going to have a guest, I think, hopefully in the next hour, that's going to walk us through in detail about this. But has Dr. Fauci said anything? He is the head of infectious disease at NIH. Has he come forward at all and made any comment on this? To me, this is kind of a landmark study because, Jack, as you point out, we've covered this throughout the world. We've covered it from France to India to Brazil to other people working on these solutions here in the United States. And remember, we've said from day one as a show that probably a vaccine is sometime distance in the future. I happen to believe that you're going to have a very difficult time finding a vaccine, if ever, because I haven't seen one for SARS or for HIV or for any of these type of things. But, we just heard yesterday, Moderna says, hey, the vaccine thing's being pushed off. We have said from the beginning, it's going to be therapeutics that'll be able to help us manage this, and particularly therapeutics that can use as prophylactics before things happen, and particularly for the heroes in our medical profession. But
Steve,
here's what I don't get. After being lectured for months and months and months, where's Dr. Fauci?
Steve, it's radio silence from Dr. Fauci.
And some radio science for a moment. We're going to go to an ad break. We'll be back in just a moment. More War Room Pandemic, Greg Mans, Jack Maxey, Stephen K. Bannon, Raheem Kassam. Hashtag War Room Pandemic. Make sure you're commenting in the live feed on YouTube, on Facebook. We'll see you in a second.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to the War Room. Greg Mans, Jack Maxey, Raheem Kassam. Over to Stephen K. Bannon.
Look, in turbulent times, you need every help you can get as an entrepreneur. The thing you need most is a software package that ties everything together. That's NetSuite by Oracle. Go to netsuite.com/Bannon, Bannon, and get your report today. 7 action steps every entrepreneur should be taking during these turbulent times. That's NetSuite by Oracle, the top software package for entrepreneurs, top software package on the cloud. Jack, I know we're going to bring Dave Ramaswamy on here, who's our resident mathematician. to talk about, help us really think through what's happening with this, with the virus in the United States, because there's a lot of conflicting evidence, a lot of conflicting talking heads who want to go back just to the math. But we got to go back and finish up with the hydroxy. This has been one of the biggest controversies in this process, is how do you come up with therapeutics? And I think if you look at what President Trump's been trying to do, it's like let 1,000 flowers bloom. We should be putting money up. He's got a Marshall Plan, or a plan that, like the Manhattan Project, to build the nuclear weapon in World War II, the atomic bomb. They've done that on vaccines and other therapies. People should be celebrating this. This is American science, American technology, coming forward, and to have this study done by this very renowned medical center in Detroit with a top quality doctor, and then to have it in, I think, the most prestigious journal, peer reviewed. And peer review means you go to a murder board and your peers get to pick this apart, and you got to come back with more evidence. So it's just not some guy putting up an opinion piece on War Room or National Pulse or National Review. This is something that's really, this is what science is. This is what CNN talks about: science-based, evidence-based, data-based science. And here you're seeing it, and the results are not just marginal results; they're 40% increases. And then it's the whole issue about people with heart problems, right? That this nothing shows up there. And this is for people who already have it. We haven't gotten a prophylactic study, which the buried lead is that the prophylactic study, which remains prophylactic, is people taking it in advance so you don't get it, particularly medical workers and these great heroes. You see this now, and it comes up that they had a tough time putting together the study because the media, the digital mob, so politicized this. That's what we've got to get beyond. President Trump is trying to do what's right for the country. I understand a lot of people are triggered on anything about President Trump, but this is a perfect example. This is a malarial drug, and everybody's in the military. Everybody's traveled to sub-Saharan Africa or down to Latin America or or out in the Pacific, knows this drug very well. This has been around for many, many decades, and this was now, after all this controversy, in the studies that showed up in either India or France or were dismissed, what happened down in Brazil, it's all dismissed. Now you have a major, major, major institution in the United States, highly renowned, with a highly renowned doctor doing a very focused test along the lines of the science, published in the peer-reviewed journal of infectious disease, which Dr. Fauci says, and I think it speaks a lot to Dr. Fauci's character, that he hasn't even commented on, or at least we can't find where the comments are, right? Where he hasn't come forward and said, hey, this is one of the, hopefully hundreds of things we're going to be looking at, and a couple of these that may stick, and what they will do is make things safer, right? Ability not just to open up the economy, but to go through with our normal lives. We're going to talk about later in this first hour in Los Angeles, not only on the 4th of July, the beaches are going to be closed in Florida and in California, particularly Southern California. I think that the mayor or the governor, somebody's put forward that you can't even sing in church. So we're right back to having, our liberties really impinged upon. But people are prepared to do that if they realize everybody's pulling in the same direction. And I think it's kind of outrageous that the New York Times, the Washington Post, people are not all over this story. And on the 4th of July, actually celebrating, which I would say is one of the first big victories in this. And it's, look, everything's not totally locked in place, but at least directionally it's showing you that there are things out there that can help us, beat this demon, as President Xi calls it. And he should know, because it came out of the Chinese Communist Party. We're going to get to more of that in the second hour. But Jack, I know we got Dave on. We got to talk about, and guys, I know you got a bunch of clips of Morning Joe today, and this is about the politicization of it. Dr. Fauci's the saint. President Trump's the devil. And the only thing I would have for the White House guys, does anybody sit down with Fauci beforehand and go through his testimony, or go through just Q&A with him before he goes over and gives testimony? You're not trying to suppress what Dr. Fauci says. You want Dr. Fauci giving information. But I would certainly like somebody to have run through the questions with him and kind of see what the responses are going to be, because I think, once again, Dr. Fauci's talking very loosely, and he's not putting forward really what the evidence is of what his concerns are. It's one of the reasons we brought Dave Ramaswamy. And Jack, anything else on hydroxy? We're going to get more of the hydroxy in the second hour, because this is so important on trying to reopen the country and really for the whole world. And look, I know I've gone on a lot about this, but this is something that really, we talked about this, I think, in the first or second or third episode with Dr. Stephen Hatfield that there were things out there that might be able to be used as therapeutics and potentially might be used as prophylactics. And to know that now after, 6 months, Jack Maxey, this is finally out, and we hear that there's other reports coming out, other studies that may back this up. But the politicization, and I hope on the 4th of July, we get beyond this. Look, President Trump is not the president of the deplorables. He's not the president of the Republican Party. He's not the president of the Trump movement. He's the president of the whole country. He's working his hardest to do what's best for the entire country, and I think the hydroxy thing really epitomizes how this thing's gotten just way too politicized.
And Steve, one more thing. We're very sad when we're trying to do this research to save lives. Apparently, they couldn't even spend the money that was given them to do this study because they could not find enough people. So there's actually money still there in the study that has not been spent. And my understanding is that we're going to extend the study, or try to, particularly the prophylactic study, to places like Brazil and maybe with some cooperation with our good friends in India. But I mean, to imagine we're in the midst of a human struggle. We're losing people every day, and they can't find people because of the politics to cooperate with the study. It's just, to me, it's absolutely frightening, and certainly some questions need to be asked of why people died.
Well, Jack, I think it's one of the reasons we have the show, and one of the powers of the show, in working with news sites like National Pulse and others, that we get the word out there. I mean, this is something we've talked about from the beginning. I mean, Dr. Hatfield, who used to be part of the war room and now is in parts unknown working away on these problems every day, he talked about this. And I think it's incumbent upon us to use this platform and others just to get the information out, and particularly to get this study out. I think there's going to be a lot more work done in this area, and I think people's awakened. Look, it's going to be pretty obvious with 125,000 dead, and Dr. Fauci saying, hey, there's going to be another 100,000 dead. If you do the math, you could potentially save 40,000 people if you use this. I think a lot of families, the more they hear about this, are going to be talking to their doctors, to their physicians, and saying, hey, since these studies are out there, is this something that we can use on our loved ones to try to help them get through this horrible plague? And I think it's incumbent upon us to really push this out. Now, a lot of the show today is going to be devoted to this because it's so important, and particularly given the fact, I think it was, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, I think it was Moderna yesterday, the company working on the vaccine, actually said that the mass testing is going to have to be pushed back. I believe if there is a vaccine, it's not going to come anytime in the short term. It's going to come 2021 or beyond, as the top scientists in the world really worked on a Manhattan-level project to try to get a solution. But here's something that may work today, and this, Jack, with the thing that really breaks my heart is the thing about the prophylactic, right? That prophylactic study couldn't be done quickly enough because of this politicization. I think it's incumbent upon all of us to get this out there and to make sure as many people, read it, study it, talk to their doctors about it, and also for us to try to force the hand of the CNNs, the MSNBCs of the world, the New York Times and the Washington Post and others to try to really cover this and make sure as many people as possible know about this.
Well, Steve, for years, for decades probably, the CDC has had a page describing hydroxychloroquine for use in travel to Africa and Central America and some places, Southeast Asia, Central Pacific, as a prophylactic for malaria. And what I find so amazing in their documents, in their advice for travel, they say perfectly safe for pregnant women, perfectly safe for children. Only problem might be psoriasis, and it's still on their site. But meanwhile, these peripheral characters around the CDC, FDA, and other places have described this thing on media as one of the most dangerous drugs to your heart in history, and it's just absolutely patently not true. And you have to wonder what is motivating people to deny truth, and to me, it's very frightening. It shows the great division in this country. So, I mean, I think
what I'm most proud about, Jack, is that I think that you brought that up. What I'm really proud about the show is I believe you brought that up back in early February, talking about, hey, we go to the CDC's website. This thing has been, because you've been to obviously travel throughout the world and used hydroxy as anti-malarial, as many people have. You said, hey, on the website, it's even okay forget the heart thing, it's even okay for pregnant women. The only thing is if you have psoriasis. I think you pointed that out back in February, which is 5 months ago. And that's my point, is that this thing has been held up because it's been so highly politicized. And we ought to let the scientists just get at it. I think we ought to have more studies and additional studies. I mean, you have to. But let people get in it, and let's be science-based, let's be evidence-based, let's be data-based. Let's hold ourselves to very high standards. But the mainstream media, and particularly the people who are so triggered about President Trump, have to understand that we're in this fight together, right? That the American citizens that are dying, right, they don't die as Democrats, they don't die as Republicans, they don't die as members of the Trump movement, and they don't die as people that oppose President Trump. They die as human beings. And that's what's so incumbent upon us, I think, to realize that these are American citizens that are dying, and we should move heaven and earth to try to make sure that we get this thing sorted out. Now, I know
Steve,
today...
Steve, we have a break.
Morning Joe.
Steve, we have a break right now. We'll come back. We've got Dave Ramaswamy on the line, more Stephen K. Bannon. Be back. More War and Pandemic. Just a moment.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, welcome back to the War Room. It is Friday, the 3rd of July, the year of our Lord 2020. Greg Manns, Jack Maxey, Raheem Kassam here on Capitol Hill. Over to Stephen K. Bannon.
Look, in turbulent times, and the first half hour of the show was talking about the medical advances in therapeutics that are going to put down this or help get us through this pandemic. Remember, the reason we're doing this show, it's a global pandemic, economic inferno that was triggered by it, and a capital markets crisis, and now a geopolitical crisis with China. In those uncertain times, entrepreneurs need operating leverage. You need tools you can use to take your business to the next level. That tool is NetSuite by Oracle. Go to netsuite.com/Bannon, Bannon, and get your pamphlet today, 7 action steps every entrepreneur should be taking. NetSuite by Oracle is #1 in the cloud, #1 with entrepreneurs. Make sure you get it. Okay, we're going to go from the Atlantic now to South Dakota. Our one and only, One America's superstar, Jack Posobiec, is live at Mount Rushmore. He's covering for One America News today. He's covering the president's speech and the entire effort. I'm going to toss it back to the studio and to Jax. Thank you so much for doing this, and One America. Really appreciate you guys. I know the guys at America Voice.News appreciate doing a live report with you too. So thank you, sir.
Jack, I'm very envious of you being there. I've never been. I've always wanted to go. I've written about Mount Rushmore. Just give us a view of exactly where you are in relation to the monument and what we're seeing taking place today, and where it's going to exactly happen. I don't know if you've got it near you in your shot, and just give us the timings of what's taking place there today.
Yeah, Raheem, well, as everyone can see right behind me, I've got about 16,000 feet of God Bless America from top to bottom. And you can actually see in the shot itself that's from Washington's nose right down to the stadium itself, or the stage itself, with the podium of the president. I've got it all right behind me in the shot. The amphitheater, believe it or not, right here at Mount Rushmore actually isn't that big. I mean, in terms of the rallies that I've covered, One America News, and having me out here, this is actually going to be on the small side of them. Only a couple of thousand people are actually going to get in. So what we noticed that people are doing around the area in cities like Deadwood and Keystone that are just down the road, and Rapid City, people are having watch parties, people are having block parties out in town. They're going to have a whole town set up of patriots and patriotic coming out to celebrate America's independence. And the one monument that I don't believe that anybody is actually going to be able to take down. We've seen a lot of people going after statues in the past few weeks, from Antifa to rioters to anti-police protesters. This is one monument. It's a little hard to get to. It's a little hard to get up there. And you can hear them doing the audio test behind me, of course, right now. Get it set up about 12 hours away from the president's actual speech. He's going to be speaking. It's 9 p.m. local, 7 p.m. on the East Coast, and then the fireworks will go up right about after that.
I'm getting something in the background there, Jack, as well. I don't know if you're standing next to somebody who's also trying to frame a shot up or something like that, but we just get some background audio. I want to throw it to Jack Maxey here as well.
So, Jack, I've spent some time out in South Dakota, a really beautiful state. I recommend everybody visit the heartland of this country. You're missing something, but Tell us again what it was like down at Fargo and some of these areas around there, because I think it's really important for America to understand that you're not seeing the same things in the streets in Fargo, North Dakota, or South Dakota as you're seeing in Washington, D.C. Am I right? You're seeing a whole different kind of attitude.
Absolutely. I mean, we drove through Rapid City yesterday. We drove out to Deadwood. We actually took a ride out to Devil's Tower on the Wyoming side. We went to see that, went to check if Steven Spielberg's aliens were there making first contact. And what you're seeing out here is this is Heartland America. You're seeing, it's very clean, it's very peaceful. Patriots flying the American flag everywhere. Motorcycles on the big sky country with huge American flags on the back. And it's not a political statement. It's not left, right, not from Biden, Republican, Democrat. It's just people loving their country, loving their heritage, loving where they come from. And by the way, also being respectful of the Native Americans of this area, celebrating the Native Americans that lived in these lands before and bringing them in. They're actually going to be a big part of the event tonight that's taking place, that's actually integrated, that yes, we have our history, we understand our history, where we come from, and now we all live here together.
Jack, just in terms of the events tonight, what you say? There's a couple of capacity for a couple of thousand there. People are having block parties, street parties, watch parties over at their houses down along there. Just give us a sense, give the audience a sense of what time to expect the festivities to kick off. What time is the president speaking? And does Jack Posobiec have any insight on what we might hear?
Well, I think that we've got I think 10 hours before the actual speech start, there's going to be two openers. The president, I believe the vice president is also going to be speaking, as well as Governor Kristi Noem, who's been an absolute rock star out here for the party and is a super rising star in the Republican Party. Definitely someone that people have looked at for potential presidential talk about, in the sort of post-Trump era. But then also moving forward, so the president's going to speak. It'll be 9 p.m. local, 7 p.m. Eastern. We're in Mountain Time here. And then I think what you're going to hear is a full-throated defense of American history, American values. I mean, you have behind me not just a symbol of four people, right, just four individuals, but four people who are known for their efforts at founding the country, at writing the country, and bringing the republic forward. That is what those four men did. That is why they are carved to the immortal stone here in Mount Rushmore. It's so larger than themselves because it's the story of ourselves and the tapestry of American culture, American heritage. And I think that the president is going to be able to contrast that with the people who are going around the country throughout the past few weeks, throughout the past month, trying to tear down our history, erase our heritage, erase our culture. And I certainly hope that he speaks to those timeless American values and really timeless values of Western civilization, Judeo-Christian values that have been civilizational in terms of how we got to where we are today.
Jack Posobiec, One American News. Thank you so much for... hold on. I think we have Steve jumping in here. Jack, just hang on.
Hey,
go ahead.
Yeah, hey, Jack, just one question. You talked about the values of the Judeo-Christian West. You talked about what the speech may be about today, about America, tying it together with the monuments and other things. Understand the president's going to make another speech tomorrow, I think on the South Lawn. Do you have any, is he going to address the issue with the Chinese Communist Party, what's going on in Hong Kong? Do you get any sense that he's going to forward lean into this really economic or information war, that our greatest rival is actually against the values of the Judeo-Christian West, principally democracy and the rule of law and individual rights? Do you believe the president will touch on that tonight, or do you think he'll get in that tomorrow?
Well, I don't know if he'll be touching on it specifically, just because of the way they have the speeches laid out. But I do think that that's the subtext of the situation that we're in right now, where you have a force that's in this country, but also an international force that's derived from Beijing, that's derived from the Chinese Communist Party. That's sort of this push and pull of the entire world right now into what kind of world do we want to be? What kind of people do we want to be? Whose set of values will we maintain going forward? Will they be those Judeo-Christian Western values, or will they be the values of the nihilistic totalitarian state of China?
One last thing, Jack. We're going to have Dave Ramaswamy on. We're going to be talking about the pandemic in the United States and this kind of what's called the surge of the first wave. out in South Dakota today at Mount Rushmore, I know the governor's decreed that you don't have to wear a mask if you don't want to. People are going to be together. We saw where Herman Cain, came down with COVID. We don't know if he got it in Tulsa or not, but the media is making a big deal about it. What's the sense out there? It's a good thing about being out here in a harbor, right? What's the sense out there about everything to do with what the governor's saying and really having this rally with people coming together? It looks like masks are going to be optional and social distancing is going to be optional. How's that playing out there?
Well, Steve, actually driving through the cities as we did yesterday, going into Deadwood, coming through the airport. I mean, it seems that as far as the outdoor spaces go, people are open here in South Dakota. Pretty much everything that we saw in the city is open. Out in Deadwood, everything was open, and you did see people wearing masks optionally if they chose to, if they decided they wanted to, and people, if they didn't want to, they didn't. And you also, one thing I noticed, there was also something I saw at the Trump rally in Tulsa. I was there, that it did seem to be sort of a younger crowd that was at that rally. And when I was walking around in some of the tourist areas here in the West yesterday, it did also seem to be kind of a younger crowd that was going out. So I think that people are really stepping up and understanding the facts, the data that's behind this. They're understanding that who's at risk, who's at greatest risk, and they're self-selecting. They're making that decision independently on their own, whether they want to wear a mask or if they decide to watch at home or to go to one of these block parties that's going on, and making that decision on their own. And so I think that really speaks to something that's very American, where we're used to making decisions on our own. We're used to that level of self-autonomy where we can decide that we make our decisions and don't necessarily need, we take the advice of government, we take the consent, and then we internalize that. And that's the entire basis of individual liberty and freedom. Yep.
Jack, really want to thank the One America team for making you available today for us to be on the show. Really, thank you.
No, it's great to be on, and I'm always grateful. Tune in to One America News. We're going to be covering this live throughout the entire day. We're going to be going live. We're going to be talking to people out in the crowd.
Very grateful, Jack Posobiec.
Thanks, Jack.
Steve, we've got about
Raheem,
2 minutes. Go ahead.
Hey, Raheem, I want to give some. Yeah, I want to give some programming news. The America's Voice team is obviously out there. They're going to be live streaming it tonight. Remember, they're the platform for the Trump revolution in the Trump movement. As a special, since the time tonight, I think when the president goes on is going to be as late as 10 o'clock East Coast time, and then there's fireworks. It's going to be quite a memorable night with President Trump out there with a very important speech about the Judeo-Christian West and Western civilization and what the United States stands for, and also fireworks and other things out there. So we're going to be replaying tomorrow in our normal slot a big part of what is taking place late tonight. The America's Voice guys will have more announcements during the day, but we think it's that important to actually get this, to make sure as many people as possible see it. It's a big day for the president. It's a big day for the country. It's a big day to come together and celebrate. And so there'll be a replay of part of it tomorrow morning during our time slot, so to make sure that people can actually see it. Maybe some of the crowd, like myself, Raheem, that goes to bed a little earlier than 10 o'clock.
Steve, we'll make sure we TiVo it for you as well. Jack, Maxie as well. I mean, you know so much about this stuff. I wrote this thing in 2017 talking about the Democrats coming from Mount Rushmore, and there's been a big movement on the hard left. You've seen attacks from Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam and all these guys on Mount Rushmore. This event is going to trigger the left, is it not?
Well, I think anything that sort of waves the American flag and brings us together triggers the left, because that's what they're afraid of. Bringing America together is the number one enemy of the Democratic Party. They survive on division. They survive on separating us and defining us by what makes us different from one another rather than what makes us all the same. And the 4th of July is all about us coming together and really giving thanks to Almighty for the great luck that we all had to be born in this wonderful country.
Greg Mann?
Yeah, and look no further than the now deleted tweet from the DNC calling the event at Mount Rushmore a white supremacy celebration.
They did actually tweet that.
Yep.
They tweeted that and they deleted it very quickly. But they tweeted that the Democratic official channel.
I'm pretty sure it was Instagram actually, but still, nonetheless.
I will challenge you on that when we come back from the break, because I have saved the tweet on my computer. Hashtag War Room Pandemic, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you're sharing everything here. From the War Room, Jack Maxey, Greg Mann, Stephen K. Bannon, Raheem Kassam. We'll be back, Dave Ramaswamy, after this break.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to the War Room. Greg Mann's, Jack Maxey, Raheem Kassam here on Capitol Hill. Over to Stephen K. Bannon.
Look, in turbulent times, and that's what this show every day, we try to report from throughout the world, whether it's Hong Kong, South Dakota at Mount Rushmore, Washington, D.C., the streets of New York, or here in the Atlantic. In turbulent times, you've got to look at your portfolio, look at every aspect of it, the stocks, the bonds, and what we recommend is you take a hard look at precious metals. The way to do that is with Birch Gold. They're the top folks in this business. They've kind of created the ability to use gold or precious metals in your IRA, in addition to maybe taking possession of it. What you should do is go to birchgold.com/Bannon, Bannon. They have a 20-page report for you to study and for you to come to the conclusion that this is right for you. Remember, they're the number one folks in this area. They've created this IRA that you can use to have precious metals. In turbulent times like this, you got to think about covering all your bets. It's now time to look at precious metals. The way to do that is with the team at Birch Gold. Raheem, I know we've got, and Jack, I know we got Dave Ramaswamy. I want to thank him for staying through Posobiec, but we have Posobiec on for a few minutes out in South Dakota. So Dave Ramaswamy, we've got the whole team here. I know they got some clips. The question I've got for you, brother, because you're one of the smartest guys I ever met. You're the one that brought up on this show 6 months ago this concept of exponentiality. The mainstream media is telling us now that this is a massive surge of the first wave. Do you see exponential growth here? Because the last two nights on television, it's like they're channeling Dave Ramaswamy. Are we having exponential growth in this surge of the first wave?
See, Steve, statistics and data are like underwear. What they reveal might be suggestive, but what they conceal is vital. So what we're seeing here is like a lot of goosing of the data and double counting and over counting. I'll give you a quick example, which is how the positive cases have been classified. They've been mixing in a few states, not all of them, but especially the southern states, Texas, Arizona. They've been mixing in the antibody tests with the swab tests. And remember, the swab test, if it says if there's a positive result, that's somebody who has COVID now. But if an antibody test says it's positive, that means you've had COVID in the past. But they're mixing the data. And then there's another example of how companies who have been taking temperatures of employees are bubbling up this data to the state health boards. I mean, they've been classifying everybody who's been tested or who runs a temperature as being positive. So overall, what I'm trying to say is we're certainly not in the exponential growth phase, even though you have some states who have a slight uptick in cases, but we are nowhere near the situation we were in the Northeast in early to mid-April. And let me add something else, the signal versus noise, which you keep bringing up. You know, the noise is the number of cases, the signal is the number of deaths. So the infected case fatality rate, the ICFR, is like 0.3%, which means for every 1,000 people infected, only about 3 people are dying. And so at this point, it's probably less or comparable to what we have with the flu. And I know you had a great segment earlier on about hydroxychloroquine, and Jack and you guys on the War Room have been leaders in bringing up scientific studies about this. And I'm sorry to say, a lot of the media narratives which have been pushed are political science-based, not science-based. And if you go back to papers in biology, even on the NIH site, in 2005, they have a paper saying hydroxychloroquine is a potent inhibitor of SARS coronavirus infection and spread. And so if you see other countries like India, like other, Central America, like India has fewer COVID deaths than New York City. And that's because most of the healthcare workers and everybody who got in contact or in close proximity with anyone with COVID was treated early on within 5 days of getting symptoms with hydroxychloroquine. And this has massively kept down the death rate. So going forward, we talk about models, and you guys have rightly shown that many of the models put out by the University of Washington and other academic institutions have been flawed, and I totally agree. I mean, we've seen a lot of models, but what we haven't seen is a supermodel, and that's what the president likes to see, and so many others. So the point is, we got to do things which are predictive, and I'll give you two quick examples. One is masks. Masks are very cheap. Lockdowns are expensive. And it's been awesome that the American people of their own volition have adopted masks in spite of very contradictory statements to the effect. Masks bring down the infection rate dramatically. Like it lowers the infection rate or especially spread by 75 to 95%. So if two people are wearing masks, your chance of getting COVID dramatically drops. And the second issue is indoor spaces and gatherings. And I know that many states have flexible policies around this, but restricting outdoor gatherings seems a little, especially like beaches or like outdoor barbecues. At this point in the middle of summer, when we need vitamin D levels to be high, which reduces the rate of infection, reducing beach outings and lake outings, it seems just preposterous.
Hey, we've got about a minute left here, Steve.
Hey, guys, I want you to jump in.
Hey, David.
I just have one question. Maybe we can keep Dave over into the next. Is it becoming more virulent but less lethal? Is that what's happening to the virus?
Dave, 30 seconds.
Yes, it's definitely getting less lethal, and I don't know, I wouldn't say more virulent. It's mutating, like all viruses mutate. But the infection fatality rate is definitely dropping, and that's a signal, Steve. So let's focus on the fatalities, not the number of cases. And right now, we are in a stage where through early therapeutics and through
Dave, hold that thought. We want to keep you over to the next segment, next episode 264. War Room Pandemic. We'll be back in just a moment. More Dave Ramaswamy, Stephen K. Bannon, Greg Mans, Jack Maxey, Raheem Kassam. #War Room Pandemic on Parler, on Twitter. Let us know what you think.